All right, public safety updates. KLB had a question first. People are concerned about some of the shopping. By the way, KLB sent this in compliance with the policy ahead of time. I relaxed it this year instead of having it a day in advance. I said, since there weren't any questions coming, how about an hour before? I got this when I walked down, but I'm willing to answer it. People are concerned about some of the shopping areas in the city after Academy had two shooting incidents. What safety measures are being taken for that area? Is Chief here? Come on, Chief. Have some fun. Join the... So let's first identify the two incidents with KLB to make sure we're on the same page, and I think that's important to do. I'm assuming it is the incident that involved the juvenile, the first one, and we'll unpack that a bit. We have a little bit, and then the second one was the most recent. The juvenile event, which we have reported on extensively from here, but are happy to do it again. We don't name names. We don't go too far into it. I see the commissioner in the audience. We've talked a lot about it. Those are fraught issues, meaning there's a family involved and there's other things that went along with that. If you can imagine a young person doing that, you ought to be thinking about some of the things that can lead to that. I wouldn't jump to just conclusions about what is obvious. There's a lot of things that went around it. A person could have, I'm not saying in this case, but a person could have mental illness, addiction issues, or both. There could be, other than mental illness, there could be an incident-driven situation. There could be bullying at school there could be lots of different things. In that incident, a young person went to Academy, to the area where weapons or bullets, I guess, are sold or kept, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so in this second incident, it also occurred to do with weapons or bullets or guns, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So KLB's first answer should be self-evident if any investigation is done on their part. Both are at Academy in this case, which I think is relevant to their question because it's one place. So that makes the first click in your head go, one spot has had it twice. Yes, one private business that sells guns and bullets has had an issue 2 times where within that store they sell guns and bullets. Is it the policy of the city that the city secures the inside of a private business? No. I would say the first question should be some reporting that goes toward the policies of what? Academy. Yeah. To suggest that somehow the city is kind of what's wrong with a lot of what's happening. That's not the city. However, to the extent that the city provides officers who are off-duty protection for the security. So now let's not assume Academy did anything wrong. Can't control how KLB chooses to edit this later, but we'll all get to see, right? Won't stop what it does if it does damage, but we'll get to see it. Let's assume Academy did it all right. They hired all the right people. They're all there, and it still happens. I would think that the first thing you'd want to do is you'd have people in that area beefed up more than anywhere else. But I do think that's not enough. It's about securing the store. We're going to have to rethink this. Why is it happening at one store? In the case of the first incident, I only am constrained by the fact that it doesn't change my ability to talk because it's a minor. I feel so constrained. I've told the chief we need to not be as worried about it if somebody's going to take action, but I also want to respect that it's a minor. I'd love to say more on that one. I really would, because I think that's the one to unpack for you, which I think we've done as carefully as we could do in at least one, if not 2 meetings here, I think. But I think it would be the most instructive as to the issue. Anyway, that child then went off in the parent's vehicle, which I think was taken without permission, ended up flipping the vehicle. It was a mess. It was a mess. But it also illustrates exactly what the police could are not tasked with preventing, how could anyone know that that child was going to do that that day? Where would that best be known? Where would the prevention of that start? That couldn't be, the police would have no way of knowing that. That's why I think the question is a bit loaded in that way. I just wouldn't have, that's not how it works. In this case, I think that a person went in, perhaps wasn't going to get a super dangerous weapon, maybe it was a different type of weapon, but nonetheless, to an officer, a BB pistol pointed at you in a split second of something looks like what? I mean, that's just not how it works. And so that's not what happened here, by the way. There was a different situation where folks were wrestling for control and there was a shooting. That was not our officers. That was an off-duty deputy working academy at that point. But I think our officers do work academy or are hired to at times.
We have in the past, yes, sir.
So it was a deputy. When that happened, the sheriff's department will look to, it's got an agreement, I believe, with multiple agencies to conduct its own shooting investigations. That'll occur there. I would suggest that KLB ask them that. But there's nothing wrong with KLB asking us what the city should be doing or thinking about in terms of academy. And I think, in fairness to Colin on that question does matter. That's why I said it to you guys. It has happened twice at or around the counter of that, and we do, while the city doesn't dictate the policy in the store, certainly there's a lot of thought about talking with different businesses about what the expectations are to keep people safe. I'm not one to jump to a causative situation when you only have a correlation so far. Let me say it that way. And I think the media has dropped that in modern times. Things that are caused are different from just two things are coincidental and it doesn't not a pattern yet make. But I do think it's fair to say 2 incidents at or around that counter, someone needs to think about it. And if you look at other stores and it's not happening the same way, then someone, again, those are all things in the pattern that one should consider. If there are policies at stores to not arrest or interdict any misdemeanor situations with regard to stolen material, bullets, etc., those are all policies that, while I don't know if they're occurring, should be considered. Back enters the council and its authority. That is not authority for me, but that is authority to think about from a council standpoint. Required security if you sell guns, etc. Now here's what you're going to run into. Reddick's talked about this. He ran into a little statute that preempts everything and then some. Anything that touches upon the regulation of the possession of guns and bullets in our state, you can't make a law surrounding. So if you're going to address this, you're going to have to do it very carefully. But it certainly is not a Second Amendment war, ladies and gentlemen, at all. This is a question of having security around a facility that conducts a certain business that increases its risk. It is no different than requiring at events, which we're going to talk about. If you're having a run at the city, you're going to have security. Maybe you didn't used to, you're not going to like it. It's going to take some money from the fundraising you're doing, but it's required. So there are going to be increased costs of public safety to private sector things that are a consequence of where we are as a society and where we are as a city and not being able to afford to deal with it as we used to. If I had to tell Colin something that I guess in the age and time we are now that he wouldn't have grown up or known the same is maybe when I was a young guy, the city would handle all kinds of events like this by having a zone covered, and just 2 zone guys would peel off and cover a run or an event or whatever. Because we get a lot of that, Cynthia. We get a lot of people going, but just a few years ago, you didn't charge us to do that. Well, you would just do it. Just a few years ago, we did not have the dearth of available officers to cover our zones that you can't get from any other agency or other city, because every city and agency has this problem. So it is a manpower issue. I can't tell you how many things that I'm asked to review on commentary and social media where people are like, and I have people bring me to review legitimate questions. What do you think about this question? Why don't we just add police officers? Guys, you're going to read that all day long. Add a cop. Where? From where? They're tired. They have to work. Chief, tell us what your thoughts are about the two events at Academy, because I want to make sure that we're not leaving something out. The question was very straightforward, just what the concerns are and what measures are being taken. I think I gave an answer about the measures, but maybe there's other things you feel we should do.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, Mayor. Certainly, some of it falls back to Academy, but these two incidents were totally.
Well, I didn't say that. You did. You're in charge.
Totally unrelated. Obviously, I, like the mayor, am going to respect, and I'm bound by law not to release names and whatnot of the juvenile. And I think it's also important to say, because there has been a lot of commentary on the police department was chasing the juvenile, and we were never chasing the juvenile. The juvenile happened to wreck and crash out. These.
Can I stop you?
Sure.
So this is, Commissioner, this is an unpack moment too. Most cities have adopted a policy of no chase on misdemeanor. We've had officers disciplined for it because of the hybridized policy we have. So a misdemeanor chase that results from a situation that leads to felonious activity. I mean, where's that line? I just want y'all to think about it. So someone takes off and it's only a misdemeanor chase, so the police officer is not supposed to give chase back because it could lead to a wreck and a death over a misdemeanor. I get it, but is it specific to the type of misdemeanor? That is one that's escalatory in nature that could lead to a felony? Those are tough lines for them. But I want you to think about the bigger issue that question begs. Think about where we are, where we have to adopt that policy in the first place. What are all the surrounding reasons for that adoption? Is it a dearth of officers? Yep. Is it a proliferation of litigation and activity that is unfair? Yes. Is it also to do with, hate to say it, bad policing and other things that occur? Yes. Mm-hmm. All of these things are happening in combination that lead to that policy having to be adopted.
Or it could be a bad persons know that we're not chasing them for that crime, they keep on going.
Mr. Villard, that's a very astute point.
And I'm saying it right here.
The folks that are doing this, they know some of those lines, and they know that we will not give chase on certain things, and they exploit that. So if you know that as an officer, should that matter? Anyway.
Yeah, and just like the way we do SWAT operations today versus the way that did them 20 years ago, our tactics have changed, and obviously I think they've changed for the better. Why are we going to chase someone 100 miles an hour down MacArthur Drive, for that misdemeanor or for a traffic offense, when a lot of times we know who it is? You can get a warrant. Certainly through neighborhoods and whatnot, it's just not, the outcome does not outweigh or the risk that's there. And so
that's a great point.
I am very, very concerned about it. We have implemented some pretty good policy, I believe, at the department. Although, our guys are committed and they want to do these things because they're driven to do this. It's just not a practice we should be in.
So that's why I'm glad I had you come up. You corrected. I was looking at it in one line of thought, not necessarily that you should do it, but just talking about the risk side of it. Of why it can be bad that you have the policy. You're actually highlighting a lot of the sensical part of it the other way, which is in many cases officers back in the day would know that's Jimmy and they would give chase, and then there could be a car wreck. Well, that would be crazy if you knew it was him, it was a misdemeanor, right? And you knew who it was, and you gave chase to a neighborhood and someone died. That would never make sense in cost benefit. And that is a new thought about policing, because in the olden days, the real thought was you commit a crime, you go till you make an arrest. That was the rule. Basically, until it's cleared by arrest, that if you're in hot pursuit or you see it happen until it's cleared by that arrest, you're free to do it. Well, that really makes no sense if we grow as a society and evolve, and that's, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
So, and back to the question, Mayor, Academy, like I said, both of them are two completely different. I think they're random acts. I don't want to comment much on the event that occurred last weekend because the Sheriff's Office and the Central Louisiana Critical Incident Team is investigating that. But
Well, in fairness to KLB, I think their question is, what should we be doing? Forget who's at, I don't think their question was geared to any kind of who's responsible for the altercation itself, but what is it, is there something unique about that we've now had 2 incidents in less than 2 full years at Academy?
I don't think there's anything unique about that. I think that we're doing what we can. I mean, and what we're charged to do. Like you said, what point is it that, when is private sector? Let's just say private sector as a whole. They take some responsibility in this too. And listen, I want to say this too. Academy had worked very well with us, and we've, in the past 2 years, we've talked to their management about things that have happened there and thefts that have occurred, and they have worked very well with us to minimize those thefts, to make it harder to get ammunition that supplies illegal firearms in this city. And I as the police chief, I am grateful that they've worked with us
None
on
of the
that.
policy making we talk about impinges upon any of the robust Second Amendment rights in
No,
the city.
sir.
Is that correct?
Absolutely
The
not.
things we talk about is access to those
That's right.
dangerous weapons in there that maybe ought to be caged up a little differently.
Which
My
are
information
obtained,
comes
which
from
are
you guys.
obtained illegally,
Yeah.
not something that is a Second Amendment that is obtained legally.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. I think that's pretty exhaustive on the question. I don't know what we'd recommend to the council. I have some ideas about that legislation that Reddix had started talking about in moving it out of anything that touches possession. But, I would venture to say we would take a beating about anything that is perceived as an attack on adding a cost of doing business to the private sector. So I'm trying to be mindful of that, but people also in the private sector need to know that it's also a cost to the rest of the private sector to have law enforcement focused on only certain industries unfairly in a greater amount than they're supposed to than everybody. And we get a lot of requests like that, Chief. Well, I have this certain thing in this certain neighborhood. I really need y'all to patrol more here. Well, that sounds great. And again, back in the day when we had every zone where nobody cared and overtime was plentiful and it didn't matter, you could just say, hey, Stephen, y'all peel off and add 2 hours here. That's not how it works today. So it becomes part of the cost of doing business, and that is a terrible thing. But these things are not done in a vacuum. We face the reality of that shortage. And so if someone says, and I got a letter this week, I need you to beef up this street with a full police presence to stop these speeders on this street. Back in the day, you would pull that out the zone and go run a little program on that street. Does it mean that we don't watch speeders anymore? No. But to ask for 2 officers to go work that specifically is a different question. The next question will be add speed bumps. Equally a bad idea.
Bad idea.
Destroys our emergency equipment. So some of this is about, in some cases, the business sector as a part of doing business, and in most cases, all of us as people living at home needing to police our streets. And here I'm going to come to the speeding part. If I were to go send that unit detail out there to look at who's speeding on that street, for the complainant on that street, who do you think will be speeding on the street? Just take a wild guess. Huh? The people who live on that street will be the ones doing it. And I know there are thoroughfares where there are drive-throughs, but statistically speaking, measurably so, materially so, substantially so, substantially so, it will be someone at or near that area. Recently, we had a lady write about that say recently. I heard it recently, but I think it was recently.
Several months ago.
Several months ago, made a complaint, wrote you,
Yes, sir. Our traffic division.
and made a complaint. And so they went out, and who was the first stop?
The lady that wrote the letter.
Colin's definitely making a public records request to get that letter. This poor lady, she's gonna be all over TV. They're gonna run a terribly negative story on the city. Somehow it's our fault that happened.
He's
Congratulations.
shaking his head on that one.
No, good. Thank you, Colin. So anyway, but that's a reality. Does that make a pattern yet or stat? Because no, but that's a very good indicator of how it works. All right, so public safety, we're going to check, the chief and I and commissioner and also fire will be announcing a lot about hardening of assets. And we will be working directly with the council on that. Festivals, schools in the city. There was recently a series done at KLB about schools. I have not seen it. I asked the chief to watch it and give me a report on it. He's not done so yet. So I don't know the thrust of it or how it was couched. But we have schools in the city. It's our responsibility to respond. We think we particularly train about that and actually want to become a leader in that and create schooling around that. I don't know if the lead of the story was some comparison to Uvalde. I only saw that social media reacted that way. I don't know if that happened in it. So in fairness,
I haven't seen
zero
it.
idea that occurred.
But just to echo what you said.
Uvalde did constitute a series of terrible mistakes when it comes to active shooting. Let there be no doubt about that. Terrible mistakes. Refusals of duty under the active shooter doctrine. I have seen otherwise with my APD, and I know otherwise would occur. So I'm positive on that one. Yes, sir.
I'll just echo what you said, and I'm very confident in myself and the officers I work with that the way we would respond there would be 100% all in. We would run absolutely to that because that's what you do, that's what you train to do. And just to echo what you said, Mayor, the training that goes on at APD and in the academy that we teach
Which includes all the other agencies in there.
is state of the art. We don't just teach it one time. We continue to look at it. Our SWAT commander is constant, and our academy staff is constantly reviewing that, looking for best practices and how we need to better ourselves every day. You never stop learning for things like this. And so obviously children are near and dear to my heart. Made a career working with kids, and I think every police officer that I work with would say the same. We would handle it to where we run to it, not away from it. And I think that the parents of those in Rapides Parish and in Alexandria, where your children go to school, can rest assured that the Alexandria Police Department will respond hands down, along with our other partners, the state police and the sheriff's office.
I think everybody would.
We're 100% committed to protecting our children in schools.
But you would agree with me that while you and I both have no doubt in who would run toward the danger, there's always room for the tabletop and the exercise to make sure the coordination and the interoperability of that plan goes, because that can be the negative too, right? It isn't that you're not willing and brave, it's does the interoperability work to maximize that effort?
Absolutely, and it's something we fear. You and I have talked about it. I've talked about it with officers, you know. I hope we never see it. I hope we never experience that nightmare here. But we all know that it's a possibility, and you know, I think we prepare as best we can every day. That next call could be it. It really could.
Yeah. Look, the Academy event was not that, but if you have I mean, you know, those kind of events that can be the event where that goes to the next level with that. You know, you have to assume that these things are faced in any community today. That's the only way you can look at it. As horrible and grim as that is, that's the reality. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about hardening of assets. I've asked you over the last 2 days, particularly today, we've given it a year and a half on our media policy. We're talking about thinking through some new things with our media partners on when we ask them to convert to some kind of help in any kind of catastrophic event to make sure that's seamless how we're going to handle that, down to more like it used to be. But I feel like, you know, they're going to think we're being arrogant or haughty when I say this, but for it to be that way, media has to also learn how it used to be, meaning the rules of engagement about embargo and those kind of things. So if there's an allowed embed in a situation so that you're getting real-time information, you have to agree to the embargo to not put officers in harm's way. And if we can get some of that agreed to, then the First Amendment rights are fully actualized, and so are the protections to our officers. I know you've had conversations with members of the media who have said, look, my role is only to get the information to the public, and it's to get it first in any way I can, regardless. And while that may offend you as an officer, and I'm sure it does, on the First Amendment side, that's a belief that can be strongly held. It can be strongly held. And so I don't believe they're mutually exclusive. I just believe that sometimes there has to be a way in which you do something so that the media and the public are getting the watchdog part they want, but they may not be able to show it when they want. Now that's a challenge because everyone's got a camera today. I'm not for, personally, a lot of the changes in the rules. I'm not going to weigh in yet on the 25 foot, whatever that rule is about coming upon an officer. I have some thoughts I'd reserve for another day, but in general, I think those are going to get stricter in favor of officers in the current administration. And so I'm not saying I would go with all of what I suspect is coming. But as a police officer, you probably would, and that's understandable. I think, again, we can do better and think about that, but we've got to come to a different set of terms with our media partners about how things work. And it's a new age. And their pressure is to be first in a whole different way because the whole world can be first with the way carrying a phone around is set up. But it doesn't make it right. And it shouldn't ever involve increased or undue influence on a situation that allows either officers to be killed or the public be victims to something. So showing something in real time that allows the bad guy or bad girl to see it in real time and change their game to hurt more people is absolutely not what was sought by a founder or anybody else about the First Amendment. That's not the point. Now, I hope that you and I can lead on this with the commissioner and others, and I think we have some particular knowledge about how to do it. I don't know if the media will listen. They may not care to listen, not care, but to listen to that because they may feel it violates what they want and how they want to do it. But there was a time, Mr. Fowler, when that would be a normal occurrence. You will get this, you will get it in real time, you agree to embargo it until this moment so that we keep people safe. And that was routinely done and honored with a handshake. And so one of my ideas about that is if we do that, you can have another part of the media segregate off and they can say, we don't agree, we're covering what we want in real time, but one person gets to embed and say, I'm willing to do the other part to get the deeper story. If they're building a long story or not, I'm willing to do that. And my first talk is going to be, and it may surprise some of you, with Mr. Jack Hinton, who's sitting here. I want to talk to him about that personally. I want to get his thoughts about it because he was not a part of traditional media and was not part of organized media. And some of you will disagree and say you shouldn't. And I noticed somebody, we all have to take the risks that we have to take to make our community better and figure out how to serve people better. That has to include all of us rethinking how we do things too. Because let me just say what ain't working. What's happening right now is not working. It's not working. It's not good for the community. So that'll be coming up. Particularly from the most grim and avoided talk about a school and our children. Guys, it's the festivals and all these other events. We're going to have partners on how this occurs. And the people who hold these events, we're going to have to rethink how this occurs. And so there's going to have to be a lot more partnering. Right now, there's a run every week, and we get a request about it. There's barricades and police officers that are gonna have to be made available. We're gonna have to rethink how many runs can occur in a month, right? Okay. I want to make sure I make a couple more comments about New Orleans, and then I'll be done with this. Listen, first of all, what happened in New Orleans was terrible. It's a tragedy at any proportion that is the worst you can imagine. Every family, and it touched families here, by the way. There were people, that event touched people in Alexandria for sure. I'm positive I personally know about it. Nothing I'm about to say should diminish what they're going through or desire of New Orleans to make right, meaning failures at many levels. I just want to clarify and amplify what I talked about the other day about how you can't let that fiction live in your head that fixing the situation there would avoid a different event there or anywhere else. See my commissioner nodding his head? We're just so aware of that. So what we worry about is what a disservice that does to anybody at home or elsewhere that you would think that preventing that one instance on Bourbon Street was somehow a panacea or universal solution elsewhere, right? So I don't want to seem callous. Those families rightfully will look at that event and see that there was at least preliminarily a 2019 report and study that said what should have been hardened. They will then, the lawyer, will easily look and say it wasn't done. And they will then look and say, you set up a duty to do it, you didn't do it, and it proximately, directly, causatively led to the situation. I'm not talking about that. That is what it is. I'm talking about if it weren't that event, could someone take off down Canal Street right now with law enforcement set up as it is right now and just take the sidewalk and do damage? Could that happen in Alexandria right now? New Orleans is different because there's so many more people that are walking around, et cetera. But could any event, could you have circled around the quarter a different way? And we've talked in staff and in our exercise about how easily it could have been done differently and more. Even that event, that's the fiction I'm talking about. Is the idea that the 2019 report would fix all the challenges that come with it. To harden these things would be impossible. It's just like fixing all the infrastructure and any other thing. You could never stop every event. I know we're going long. You could never stop every event, right? You couldn't do it. But like the 2019 report, when we know we're having an event where we are inviting people to come be a part of that event, you better bet the duty is increased on us. And we will have to think about how to do it. So when council members hear we can't handle that event and we're pressured or say, but y'all had an event like this at this time or that, there are going to be some no's that come from our internal ability to put on certain things. And I hope it doesn't mean that every time we have to come in front of the council and unpack security measures that we won't be doing every time. All right. Now, limited resources we'll have to deal with in limited ways. I'm finishing on this utility issue that has to do with the major budget amendment. I gave y'all a report on it, our ranking in the last several months. It should be in these reports. I'll get them from August, October. Thank you, Chief. We were running 1 and 2 lowest, Alexandria's electric utility. We're now still in that same top third quartile. We dropped a couple spots. There's some fuel cost issues. We gave you the report at major budget amendment about what we returned to the citizens. Millions of dollars from direct changes in practice here. And so that led to savings. And that is an important thing that we need to keep harping on and going over and stop the madness of destroying this utility, which is one of the most important assets we have. KLB asked me to answer this, so I'm going to read it and we can talk about it, and that'll be our final thing. A woman contacted KLB recently about having estimated amounts on her utility bill in Alexandria. So I'm going to keep reading, but right there, red flags or bells go off in my head. This is not how reporting is done in the way I grew up. And it shouldn't be done. A woman contacted KLB. Okay, fine, an anonymous source. as to us. If KLB has the name of that person, they should make a request and get her billing history. That's a minimum that should be done before we have to answer the negative. Prove a negative, right? Anyone can say anything. So there's no way for us to rebut or do anything. But it continues the falsity of so many of these cases where I've been asked to review it or have someone review it and report. And I told y'all the percent last time. Of all the tens upon tens that allegedly that I get from council members, I'll ask, and 2 of the council members are now gone and won't be able to do it, but I've got a few in here. Have any of you had one that complained to you turn out to be true? You don't have to voice it out loud, but you can nod to me. No, since let's say last year. Okay. So that's a problem, because if someone says something over and over, you can call it primacy effect, or if it's the last thing said, recency effect. But no matter how many times KLB reports this, it will never make it true. And no matter how many times they interview someone to say it, but don't do the follow-up work of just figuring out if it's true or not, which is very easy to do, it doesn't make it true. It doesn't make it true. When I came in, we were millions of dollars in the hole. The utility was on the verge of catastrophic failure. All of it fixed. Back to the top of the goods chart of one of the lowest in the state, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, never reported on, never. By any of these guys, that is never reported on. But that's a fact done by auditors and third-party sources that we have no control over. In that time period, restored the utility back and are providing to our customers a lower fuel cost, the only thing that's a pass-through. Haven't changed a rate since 1986 to their negative. Never reported on, not once. Also never reported on by any of the media, particularly KLB, is to go make a comparison to other utilities and ask the same questions and do the same thing. It's easy to pick on the city because there's elected officials. But you know what's easier, and I don't like it because I think it's wrong for the citizens. But all their records are public records, which again, I don't really like. But if you're going to say on social media and to the media that X has happened to you, and you're going to go to the media where you've waived your privacy rights in it anyway, you're saying it's true, then follow up and see if it's true. That was my first sentence. I'm not through with it. You ready for the next one? She conserves her electricity and tries to keep it around $70 to $80. And yet her bill shot up almost $200 as an estimated amount. That is a problem. I don't disagree that that might not be true. I don't know if she thinks it's conserved or that she was estimated more than once. I don't know who this person is. This is not about the person. It's about KLB's report. This is not about you at home. If you have an issue, come see us tomorrow and we'll unpack your bill and we don't have to tell anybody and figure out if something happened to you. That'd be the first thing I'd ask is, you went to KLB, they have nothing to do with your bill. Did you go to the city yet? It's comical. Did you figure out yet? So KLB would have people believe that the reason people won't do this is they feel the city will retaliate against them. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's something wrong with your bill, it's easy to figure out. It's just that of all these bills that I've seen reviewed and that the council has brought to our attention, they always carry a giant past due balance, which no one wants to talk about, because only the city gives people the leeway to have large past due balances. And yet, we were able to return us back, recoup and save this utility and do all those things. This ought to be a positive story about our city. Our utilities' progress should get a series of positive stories and how it can make a difference in businesses' lives and offer them an opportunity if they grow a business in certain areas or of a certain size or of a certain expenditure of capital materials. Instead, it's routinely attacked with the least amount of substance at all, which is, I said it, therefore it's true. I don't even have to back it up with anything. I have a call. This is, and then it follows up with this. This is just one example of the many emails and calls we receive from the public with concerns about their utility bills. Why is this still happening? I can answer that one. That's the easiest one. Because you keep running stories that mislead the public. That's why it's still happening. Because you keep making an availability of people to call and not have a consequence whether it's accurate or not. We are willing to set up, if need be, a separate firm at your selection, accounting firm, to hide from ourselves the information and let you review it in secret, and we bet it will prove our point.
It's all public record anyway.
But it's all public record. But when that was pointed out before, then KLB ran a story, so the city gets it either way, that we were trying to expose people's public record. So we can't, you see, it's a trap, because the real story will never let you out of the headlock. But it's also easy to discern. Take the person who's called, and it is very possible that there's an estimation or a catch-up or something else. It's also possible, Colin and KLB, that the city made a mistake. That's possible too. It's very possible that the city made a mistake. And if it did, it'll correct it. But it can't be corrected by KLB because they have no ability to correct a billing issue. What can be corrected is if someone calls and shows that they have a problem, it can be corrected. I would just suggest to you to think about that there's a utility bill in a city in modern 2025 America that someone is admitting they can keep to $70 or $80 a month. You know what that means? That means their whole bill, because we're talking about Alexandria, remember, that's not just electric. That means someone's entire utility bill is $70 to $80. I guess KLB missed that part of the story. That someone's bill would even go to $200 for all utilities in a month. Now, if it's $70 to $80, that's a problem. But if you have a bill that's $70 to $80 every month, that's pretty good. So we don't think that there's things happening by any organized or wrongdoing of the city. We just think that there are issues that happen with utility bills. There are issues with rules about reading. There's a dog, there gets to be a dog code. Then there's no dog. Someone gets estimated over and over after there's no dog or gate. It's still being coded that way. And some worker for the city doesn't do the job properly, doesn't fix that. Does that happen? Yes, it happens. And if they're caught doing that, there's a consequence. But we can't ensure that never happens because it happens in every utility. It happens in every utility, not just Alexandria, all of them. What we can do differently, much differently than any other is because it's a public record, anyone can research if it's true or not. I hope that in this case it is true. I actually do, because we'll be able to fix this person's problem and we'll finally be able to find one that we can hold up and go, bam, she was right and we fixed it. But the only way to do that is if they'll play ball and prove it. And then it's easy to do. But of the hundreds we've been challenged with, hundreds of claims that have been made on social media. All right. Questions about the utility issue?
One thing that might be interesting to the folks is the Public Service Division just came out with a report on electrical service for the whole state that they regulated the last year. And it's about a 50-page document, pretty interesting.
I just know that if the utility were allowed to function and was a supportive enterprise part of the city, it would be better for us. It's an asset to us. And really, it's just getting old. The amount of misinformation is laziness. It's a laziness that is almost unconscionable at this point. We've unpacked it. We have on our website, you can go look at an unpacking you'll never see from a utility, exactly how everything's calculated. And it's just so easy. Here's the account. You can go look at the history, see what was past due and what's not. Listen, some of you may have had, you've had them in the past. I have, again, like Brown Water, I have had my utility bill wrong. One time, $50,000, it said, in 1 month. So I know there can be a misprint or something wrong. It happened to me. But of the many I personally reviewed, I didn't find one. All right, I see y'all shaking your feet going to sleep. That's a really bad sign. Anything else? This was a big one, but it's the first of the year. All right, thank you very much.